Welcome back to the Hawkins Do You Coffee podcast. My name is Ren.
And my name is Emily. And in this podcast, we talk about all things Stranger Things.
Today, we have some more outlandish theories because we love an outlandish theory.
We say we have more theories. We have one to add to our one.
We did that one episode where we spoke about all the potential, we did the big mind map and we picked a theory out. Do you remember? They were quite wild. That was
way back.
It was.
I say way back in the day. It was like Halloween, October last
year.
But
that was fun. That was pretty outlandish.
It was, but it doesn't have the outlandish title that the other one has.
Okay, so we're adding number 2 to the outlandish title
series
on the Hawkins Do You Coffee podcast. I don't really think this one's that outlandish. I think the theories as to why this could be a case are quite outlandish, but the actual theory itself is not particularly.
No, I mean, I'm going into this relatively blind because for context, those that have not listened to it, we have a Mike Wheeler is evil outlandish theory episode, because literally one of our first conversations, I think it was it was essentially the first conversation. You offered me a Funko Pop and then I was like, cool, thank you. Do you know I have a theory about Mike Wheeler? And
that's literally how it went. Like that's how the conversation went. That was the conversation.
Yeah, and then essentially it was about how he's evil and how, I mean, it was very cool if season 3 didn't happen. So a lot of it was pre-season 3, but obviously listen to it. It is cool. There are some things that could still fit. I know it's utter rubbish. And I was really proud of that theory.
I really like that theory. I mean, we hung out November 2017. You told me that theory January 2018, and then we hung out at the end of 2018. So I clearly must have thought that there was some merit. Otherwise, I would have just blocked you.
Can't believe you just admitted on the podcast you stay with me for the Mike Wheeler theory.
Oh, I came for Harry Potter, stayed for Mike Wheeler. That's what happened.
What a thing. Anyway, so as I said, this one is very much, this is your theory, kind of.
It is.
Sort of. It's your theory.
There's been a couple of discussions about this online, but as we all know by now, on the Hawkins Do You Coffee podcast, I am quite obsessed with my queen, Joyce Byers. Therefore, anything Joyce Byers does, I will pick up on and focus quite a lot on. And she has 2 children, so you'll be happy about this because Will is like your fave. So you'll be happy to talk about Will. So I focus a lot on the Byers and what the Byers do. So do the Byers actually have pre-existing links to the Upside Down before season 1?
And we will get into that after we tell you where you can find us on other platforms. Because you're listening to us on your respective platform right now, but there are other places where you can hear us. Surprise. And those places are Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and Stitcher, and Amazon Music and Audible at Hawkins Do You Copy. Really mixed up the order today. That was not meant to happen.
You saved it though.
I don't know how I saved it.
You saved it.
Anyway, you can find us on those places at Hawkins Do You Copy. Then on social media at Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Hawkins Podcast. And then on YouTube and Tumblr at Hawkins Do You Copy. Question of the weeks will be happening from this week. So the day you'll listen to this, which should be maybe a Sunday, maybe a Monday, depending when this goes up, there will be a question of the week this week happening. So look out for that on our Instagram and stuff.
You said about being on Audible. Obviously that's quite a new thing and we have spoken about that before, but I told my respiratory doctor that I had a podcast that was on Audible and he was very excited about it, so I just wanted to throw that in because he was very excited about the fact that the podcast was on Audible.
Shout out to the respiratory doctors out there listening.
I feel like we should say, because there's no question of the week on our Instagram, that the question of the week from the podcast is, what is your favorite outlandish theory?
Yeah, we'll throw that one back in. I think we did that with the Mike Wheeler one. So
We did.
Maybe this then is just,
there's more of you now. Come tell us.
Come tell us what your favorite outlandish theory is.
We will. And
then listen to ours.
Yes, because I was saying I'm going to get into mine. Well, this isn't my favorite one. My favorite one is that Jonathan is Hopper's son.
Don't tell them that.
That is my favorite outlandish theory. I love it. But this one I have a very soft spot for, because I do think that there are aspects of it that could be plausible. So do the Byers have pre-existing links to the Upside Down and or MK Ultra? Let's get into it. Season 1, we have Will, and we know that Will gets taken into the Upside Down, and then we know that sets off a big chain of events throughout all the seasons where Will keeps having this constant connection to the Upside Down. And you think at first that that's kind of just the story, and that he gets really lucky and they were able to save him, and it's kind of everyone's commitment in trying to save him. But if you look at the finer details of it, how the hell did he survive? How? But how? Like, we've spoken about this before. There is no way he should have survived. Like, everyone else that went in there, dead straight away, almost dead straight away. He survived a week.
He's just a very good hider. He's a reverse Star Kid Hufflepuff.
What he is. He also, obviously we don't really see him in the Upside Down in the show, but we do see him in the comics. And it's, if we take the comic as canon, which I think you do for the first one, like we've said before,
the first one I take it as canon. I think it makes sense.
Yeah, he kind of knew immediately what to do. Like, he has that moment of like, oh, where am I? But he kind of knows how to communicate with Joyce, and he knows how to, use the lights, and also to kind of get around, like to get to different places in Hawkins, but the Upside Down version, and like being able to kind of communicate and figure out sort of what's going on. And he has a really good read of the Upside Down before, like, quite quickly. And I guess you could kind of argue survival skills, and that he knows that he needs to kind of figure out what's going on in order to survive. But he very quickly figures out what to do and how to sort of let his mum know things, which is quite interesting in itself. And I think it's really interesting when that goes into season 2. And obviously there is that possession, but the possession feels a lot more, I want to say a lot more personal when Will is possessed, compared to then later when we have Billy and the rest of the Flayed. Like, that doesn't feel
as targeted. It feels more convenient.
No, it feels more convenient and more kind of like what the Mind Flayer needs to do in order to win. Whereas with
like if
Will,
Billy hadn't been there that day in the car, would that still have happened?
Would it have been anyone else?
Yeah.
It could have been anyone. Whereas for Will, it felt more like a partnership. Like the Mind Flayer kind of picked him.
Yeah.
Rather than just needed anyone. And I think he's just a lot more possessed. Will is just a lot more calculating, and a lot more, it's a much more interesting possession, I think. And obviously the fact that those abilities stay into season 3, and we assume into season 4 that he still kind of has this connection. Why Will? Like, why was he there? Why him? He's just this kid. Why did this happen? And then if it was just Will, you'd think he was taken into the Upside Down. That's fair enough. But then we have Joyce, who immediately figures out something's going on. Like, a lot of people say, well, she was grieving, so she didn't want to believe that something had happened to him and that he was missing. She wanted to sort of believe that he was okay. And obviously, yeah, that is a big part of it. But she does go like through, I don't want to say like through the motions, but she, you know, they get the posters made and straight away she's kind of figuring out, okay, we'll have to find him. I'm going to go to the police. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. But then the second something happens, something like a bit unusual happens, she turns to it immediately. And obviously, yeah, we can argue that that's just something that she did within the grief and she kind of jumps to it and she just so happened to be right. But why would you put so much on something like that? Why is she willing to argue with her son in the street? Why is she willing to sort of essentially fight everyone and keep doing all of that for something which even in she does know, because she says multiple times, sounds crazy? Like she's so kind of tuned to it. She knows how to communicate with him as well. Like she figures out pretty much immediately what's going on and that she can use the lights, and she has all the lights up in his room and she's figuring out all of these things. And she's scared when the Demogorgon comes through the wall, but she's also quite like practical with it. Like she really sort of jumps into action. And I think why that's her attitude to it is quite an interesting one. Like she's quite sensitive to it. And then we have Jonathan, who I think is similar to Will in the sense that he doesn't immediately believe what's going on, but once he's aware, he's very sensitive to it. Like him and Nancy were able to find the entrance to the Upside Down straight away. When they're in the house and it's the monster hunting trio at the end, he knows the difference between it being the Demogorgon and Joyce. He literally says, like, Mom, is that you? Like he knows it's her. And she's able to know that he's there as well, when actually they shouldn't know where the other one is. That there's no reason why she should know he's in the house and he should know she's walking through the house. There's no reason why they should know the other one is there, but for some reason they're able to feel through this kind of alternate dimension veil that the other one is there, and he's able to know the difference. So all of those things have kind of, there's been a little bit of a discussion, and it's a theory I really like, of is there pre-existing connections to the Upside Down with the Byers?
I think it'd be interesting if there was. I think it's tricky because it is a thing of how far do you go with the concept. That it's kind of, this is going to sound weird, but you know what I mean? It's kind of like in the same realm of why I'm going to presume we are going to see more numbers in season 4, but kind of like why I don't want to see the numbers, and why like the 6 comic wasn't necessarily my favorite series. Because I think it kind of takes away the magic of somehow this is happening with Elle. It's kind of, I know it obviously isn't quite the same because we're not talking about numbers here, but it's, you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing that, I mean, I talk a lot about how much I would love it if Will had some kind of powers and if Will was somehow the mind player and that kind of thing. But I do also understand that sometimes maybe it is literally just he was in the wrong place at the completely wrong time. And maybe the family had been caught up in this at the wrong time. What I do think is interesting, and of course, as you were saying about when Will was through the Upside Down, and thinking of it actually with the comics, that it is very D&D how it's presented in the comics. So for those of you who haven't read it, I recommend this one. As we said, it's the one really where I consider it canon, or as far canon as it can be, because unlike the other comics, it's not really adding anything new as such. It's working alongside it. So apart from the new one, which I always pronounce wrong, the Tomb of Webwen, which I really like. I've only obviously read the first one, and you've really read the first one as well, but I do really recommend this one. I think maybe my favorite one, dare I say it, because it's really well written. Anyway, for those who haven't read the first one, I'm going to get the name wrong again, but it's something like Into the Other Side, Onto the Other Side, whatever. Will Byers comic, call it that. that throughout it is presented like a story and a campaign, and he, as he's there, it changes to his character of Will the Wise and a mage. I don't know, I think Elle's portrayed as a mage, or she's portrayed as like a forest creature of some kind, and like as he's going into Castle Byers, it's presented as like a big castle in typical D&D fashion. So it is interesting how his journey is through that. So that could be why he is able to survive, that he's treating it as a campaign. And that kind of comes across in the show as well, if you think about it, when he's talking with Joyce at the table and he's drawing Will the Wise. The bit where she says about the green, it looks like he's throwing cabbages, and like, why does he need fire when, or whatever the line is, as like the bad guys can fight too. So that's why he has the fireballs and stuff like that. So there are references throughout, but D&D is very obviously central around Will's character. Maybe that is literally how he was able to survive it then. He thought, this is literally what Will the Wise would do.
Yeah. I really do think that there could be something along the lines of like D&D actually playing a part. One of these theories I have always I've sort of really focused on, and I've there's two of them that I don't think I particularly came up with, but they're two that I have really focused on and tried to kind of establish. But the other one is something which I have seen other people talk about, and that's that Will accidentally created it with one of his drawings, and that he is the reason why it exists, which kind of comes under is Will the Mind Flayer. But that could tie in with the D&D thing, that Stranger Things is actually him, a story, and that's why he's able to communicate, and that's why his family know about all of these things, because it's his story that's being told.
Because
if you think about it, we learn about the different characters through bits of his drawings and the Mind Flayer and the maps, and it's quite a lot of what he's drawn.
A lot of his drawings as well. I mean, in season 3 there's the prisoner with, I think, Hopper's number on him, which could be a complete Easter egg, but it could fit in with that. I don't think he created him. I think it is a thing looking at the Krill House teaser. I think it is something that has been there, but I would be up for the idea. I mean, as much as I don't want it to be a massive D&D game, I would be up for the idea that it's his campaign that he's created. And at the end of it, he's like, no, it wasn't meant to work like that, or something like that. I would be up for that concept. Not that he is the overlord, essentially, but
Will the Wise is evil.
Yes. Outlandish theory, part 3. But no, I still want him to be the Mind Flayer. I would like that. Duffer Brothers. If you haven't given me it in season 4, you've still got potentially 1 season left to do it. But I don't think he's the overall creator. But I do like the concept, as I said, of him creating something, some kind of thing.
So another one of these things, another one of the theories as to why they might have a connection is, obviously we know that part of the MK Ultra studies took place in Hawkins, and a lot of people, obviously Terry Ives took part, and she's obviously Elle's mom, so she lived nearby and now still does kind of live not far away. Were Joyce and Lonnie somehow involved in the MK Ultra, and this is like a fire starter situation where it's something that their children have inherited, and the reason why, and this ties into the other one, is the Byers live so far out of town, but they live close to the lab. So is it like a fire starter situation where they took part in MK Ultra and now the kids have to have an eye kept on them?
That would be quite interesting, I think,
because obviously there's reasons why Will is going to the lab in season 2, because he has episodes. But are there other reasons why they want to keep an eye on him?
Yeah.
Because they live very close and they seem to be the family that are the most connected. And I think a lot about, obviously we don't see a lot of Lonnie, but he tells Jonathan that he needs to get out of the town. Like he essentially talks about Hawkins and why Jonathan needs to get out of it. And you think
that is a point. Yeah.
And you think, is there actually something, I'm not giving Lonnie Byers any credit whatsoever, he is an awful human, but were they involved somehow, you know, like the same way that Terry and everyone and Alice and everyone got involved with it, in the sense that it was take part in this fun experiment and there's money like that, you know, so many people took part in it for that. You know, I obviously wasn't part of MK Ultra, but I did loads of studies at uni because you get, like, they give you stuff, they give you things to participate. Like I'd get uni credits, but sometimes they'd be like, do this study for a £10 Amazon voucher, and I'd be like, cool. Like you know, there's incentives to it. And when no one knew what those studies were and it was just advertised as this thing to just kind of take part of, and no one sort of knew the actual damage and detriment that what happened, like the government deceitfully lied to lots of people about what these studies were, and it really harmed a lot of people. But it wouldn't surprise me if in real life there were follow-ups, because of, not because I think there were powers, but because of the actual impact that it had. And obviously we know that Firestarter is an influence, and we always think that it's because of Elle. But what if it isn't? I've said before that we think Elle's the main character of Stranger Things, but I think it's Will. What
and
if
I've
it
said
is?
Before that I want to agree with you. I think in some sense, as I said, like to play devil's advocate in this, in some sense, Will technically is because it's all happened because of him. So if you're looking at main characters in that sense, my boy Will Byers, he's the main character. But I fear he is being written out of season 4 again. I've gone full 180 on his role in season 4. We've reached this point. But I would like it. I think it would be cool, and I think it would be one of those things that I don't think people would necessarily expect.
It's been there all along.
It's definitely not the Creel house. It's actually Will Byers.
But no, but like Joyce, like, it's something Hopper would know about. Like the fact that David Harbour talks about it, it's something that Hopper would know about. Like the fact that those studies were taking place so close. And I just think like it would have been something people didn't know about these things. Like it was a huge lie. Like the government covered up exactly what they were doing, and it hurt a lot of people.
Would she be allowed to say anything? I don't think she would she?
No, probably not.
It'd be completely confidential.
Yeah. So she might, like, so she could just be dealing with all of that. And also, like, Joyce has, people have an opinion of Joyce even before season 1. And I think, where did that come from?
Yeah. Like,
did she, like, do you know what I mean? Like the town has kind of made their judgment on her, and you think what did happen before season 1?
Yeah, but they're very, like, Will and Jonathan are Lonnie's boy, they're not Joyce's. I do wonder if some of that is left over from what was going to be Stranger Things, because I'm sure that, I mean, don't quote me on this, but I'm sure that Lonnie was the one that was meant to come back and help Jonathan and Nancy in the house, because Steve was going to die, wasn't he? So I wonder if that earlier storyline, when he says, only going back to what you said about when Lonnie tells Jonathan, you've got to get out, I'm not the issue here, or
you
whatever.
Definitely are the issue, dude. But
I wonder if some of that was like leftover stuff from before that still kind of worked, but also doesn't quite work.
Now it just works for me coming up with outlandish theories about Joyce and Lonnie being involved with MK Ultra.
Do you know what? Give me them, if we're counting Suspicious Minds as canon, Maybe. Give me a complete like plot twist of Alice actually being Joyce.
That would be
Give me
really
that.
cool. I would love that. Because Alice sees Elle.
Yeah.
And Joyce immediately wants to help Elle.
Yeah.
Like, because Joyce doesn't question what Elle can do.
No.
Not once.
No.
Like, there is not a single moment. And yes, it's because she wants to find Will, but there is not a single ounce of hesitation or disbelief or judgment in what Elle can do. Not one.
Not like everyone else.
Not like everyone else. It's like she is like, yeah, I've seen this before, cool. It genuinely wouldn't, like, I don't think it's something that is going to have been the case, and I don't think it's something that people would necessarily think of, but it wouldn't like surprise me if they did take part in it.
No, I think
especially Lonnie. I know that sounds weird, but like Lonnie really wouldn't surprise me.
I think we've said this before, that it's a bit of extra money. Why not put them through it?
Why not? Because because you had no reason to distrust the government.
No. And I think they would have been told that they could pull out at any point.
They were
as well.
And that was not what was allowed in real life as well.
No. But that's what they're told. So maybe they genuinely did get away. They did it once and then like, no.
Yeah.
And that's why it's not really mentioned.
And it affected the kids. And that's why Will is taken. Because maybe the Demogorgon and the gate has been closed all of this time, but then like it remembers Elle and Will because they were the two babies, like that would have literally been inside to test participants at that time. It wouldn't affect Jonathan as much because Jonathan would have been born. That's the only thing, unless they took part in it before he was born as well. But it could also be something that he was exposed to it. And if Joyce or Lonnie were also like more, I don't want to say like open-minded, but if they were more kind of susceptible to an alternate thing, then it could be something which is kind of there as well. But it makes sense as to why it would affect Will more than Jonathan, which it does do in the actual series, because it's the same as Terry and Elle in that she was pregnant at that time and Joyce could have been pregnant.
Brown. Yeah. Kind of like a Darren Brown situation. I don't know how many people know who Darren Brown is.
Legend.
If anyone's been to his stage show, whether that's the UK or US, you'll know what I mean. That when he picks people to come on stage, you tell that I've been to see Darren Brown a few times. And when he picks people to come on stage, or when he does things with the audience, it's a specific kind of person that essentially you have to be completely open to it happening. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Not going to happen.
So I do have a point. So maybe that's kind of what happened with them. One was more open to it, one wasn't more open to it.
Yeah.
And that's why it worked and it didn't work. I would like it. I think it'd be cool. I think, to go back to what you said about Joyce earlier, I feel like I'm playing bad cop through this, but that's a good thing about discussions of theories. I think with Joyce it is tricky because you're right, she does know immediately what to do and she is going for it. I think the tricky thing is how much of that is a grieving mother though.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, even though she's in it and she's so convinced that's Will and she puts up all the lights and does it, there is that moment when they find Will's body before Hopper goes to her and says, you were right, that she's resigned to herself as he is gone. And I think it's that moment there that annoyingly I think pulls that away, only because it is kind of showing that she's acting on grief. So it's kind of like, if you if you're really, really focused on something and it's a genuine concern to you as a person. So I'll come about that. I have health anxiety. That I do. I am a health anxiety person, that it is a nightmare, but that's for another day. Moving on from that. My point is though, if you're so fixated on something in your mind, no matter what it is out there, if there is something that in your mind that fits with that you're going to believe in and think, if it can happen there, it can happen to me too. Whether it's related or not, you're going to latch onto that and think, this makes sense with what's in my head. So in the same kind of realm, if she's so convinced that Will is alive, I mean, he was alive, so she was right. But if her mind is going, he's alive, any random coincidence, maybe she thought Will talk to me or something once and a light flickered once.
Yeah.
She's going to think it's happened. So she's going to latch on to that. And then if it keeps happening, even if there is no pattern there at all, she's then going to believe that's what it is.
Yeah.
And as I said, that she was ultimately correct. But so much of it up to that point could be that kind of idea from a psychological point of view, then, that she's finding signs in things that don't actually correlate.
Yeah. Just, it makes sense for it to be a grief thing. Like her goal is to find her son, so why is she going to question the methods that they're using to do that? She's gonna just want to find him.
Exactly.
So no, I know what you mean, and that is the more logical reason for why
but
she's
ultimately but also ultimately she was right. So the point still kind of stands then, that you said that maybe there is a connection there though, regardless, because how, even though yes, I said that it could be she's picking on patterns and doing that kind of thing, how does she realize that that's what's going on? And then from Will's end of things, how does he know, if I do this here, it will send the message there? There's no way for him to know that.
It's also interesting because not once does she think this is Will's ghost.
No, she doesn't. It's Will.
Yeah. That's what I find quite interesting, is a lot of people would probably think that's a ghost or some part of like the afterlife. Whereas for her, he's alive. He's just somewhere else.
Which is
why would she assume? Why would she assume he was somewhere else and not, if she's not thinking he's a ghost?
Which is interesting itself, because the ticket to the cinema that she buys him is to Poltergeist.
Yeah.
So why is she not thinking it's the Poltergeist? Because it's probably a clever parallel that what's happening is very poltergeisty. But maybe you'd start to think that's what was actually going on. Jonathan is, however, I don't want to say the more interesting one, but Jonathan is the one that intrigues me a bit, because I think, especially in D&D terms and that kind of thing, the Upside Down is generally, or it is the Upside Down, isn't it? It doesn't have a different, the Realm of Shadows, that's what I mean. It's quite difficult to find, right?
Yeah.
You have to be at a specific point to find it.
There's a bit where there's a bit in our world and a bit in the alternate sort of dimension where they cross over, but it's just like a normal place, but you wouldn't know it unless you were kind of looking for it.
Yeah. So how does he know, as you said, it's right there?
He finds it time immediately.
And also, let's think about that. He gets a picture of the creature as well, which he doesn't actually, I'm sure he doesn't know he has that photo until he looks closer.
Yeah.
So how is he be able to get that other way? Maybe it is meant to be kind of like a parallel again, where you take photos of ghosts and that kind of thing, and it shows up that way.
Yeah.
But surely, like with the way it is, you'd know something is in that photo. But then maybe it's working kind of like how the Mind Flayer does with the TV, where somehow it's broken through and you just see the picture there, and it's worked that way. Because there's no reason why the Mind Flayer should be on that camera either.
No, absolutely. For me, the weirdest thing with Jonathan is that he knows that it's Joyce.
Yeah,
because
that
he
bit there.
shouldn't know.
Because he's seen the lights flash in fairness when it was the Demogorgon, but the lights were still moving. How would he?
And how would he know it was Joyce?
Yeah,
Could have been anyone. Could have been anything.
Yeah, because does he know that her and Hopper have gone off to the lab? Does he?
Nope.
No. So there is no reason, unless it is no, because it could have been.
And
Will.
she shouldn't know that he's there either.
No.
It interests me that they live really close to it. The other reason why they could be more kind of susceptible to it is, I don't want to say like contamination from the lab, but if things are kind of traveling, if bits of, not like air particles from like the Upside Down and stuff, but they live really close to it, and there definitely could be some kind of like
if you think about the gate and all that research is underground, isn't it? So it's not on the base levels of the lab.
No.
So, and we can kind of see in season 2 when the Upside Down is seeping into the pumpkins and all the crops. Why am I calling it that? And all that kind of thing. It's seeping into all of that. So what's to say that it's not in other things? Maybe it's in the water, or that I know that would affect the entire town, but maybe it is something like that.
That's the thing. Like we said before in one of the videos we did when we looked at old theories, is the whole town under kind of MK Ultra control? Is it intentional? Are they trying to do it so some of the kids or some people in the town are more susceptible to certain things? Is it a whole experiment, like, and they just live really close, so it's easy to kind of give them, kind of get them involved somehow?
Yeah, because we can't say it's like a dairy situation, because it's not just the kids.
It's not just the kids.
It's a lot of the adults as well. Even even Bob, who didn't see it for a lot, but even he kind of knew what was going on. He was filled into it. Obviously, he said all the adults in the lab. So something is clearly around everywhere, and especially now with the Krill house being the local hub, it seems, of the Upside Down. It's something is going on there.
Yeah, exactly. I think logically the whole thing is just probably that Will was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it kind of just kickstarted a whole chain of events. And the reason why they kind of, and Joyce and Jonathan act in certain ways is grief and trying to deal with that. And we obviously have a whole episode where we talk about grief and the way that grief manifests in the show, because ultimately, whilst the show is a sci-fi show with alternate dimensions, it is also about the people and these kids and these people that have had to deal with like indescribable grief in so many different ways, and the loss of so many different things, not just people, but like their lives and their livelihood and kind of how they've dealt with so many different things. So that is kind of some of the overarching themes of Stranger Things. So those reasons are a lot more logical. But obviously it's interesting to kind of think about the fact that they do live really close to the lab, and we see that, like, one of the first shots of Will running, we see the gate.
Yeah, it's in the first 8 minutes of the show, isn't it? So.
Yeah. And they're just sort of the family that seem the most connected to the Upside Down. No, like Hopper, it's always the way. Hopper is as well, but Hopper kind of is through, sounds really weird, but like Hopper kind of is through teaching himself to be aware of what's going on, whereas the Byers seem to be aware of what's going on naturally.
Hopper wouldn't have been aware if Joyce didn't go to him and say, my son is missing.
Yeah. Whereas they just seem naturally like intertwined with it.
I mean, and now Elle, as we say every week, apparently, now Elle is living with the Byers, which could be we need to put her somewhere. Now in season 4.
Joyce would have taken her in if she hadn't died in season 1 and then Hopper didn't ultimately take her in. Joyce would have had her from season 1.
Yeah, exactly.
So
convenience or not, it is interesting that she's been put with them. I hope it means something. But I'm happy to be disappointed. No, I won't be disappointed. I hope that things will come of it. I would very much like things to come of it.
That would be nice. I would like that too. But no, that is one of my outlandish theories. I'd love everybody to just pick it apart and tell me I'm wrong. That'd be great.
Like I did.
But that would be fun. But no, genuinely, I'd love to know people's opinions on it, because I do think it's quite interesting as to why they're the family.
Yeah, there's things I think work both for and against it.
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%.
There are things that you still can't completely prove false.
No.
Kind of like the Mike one, you pretty much could. I think that.
No, I think there's aspects to the Mike one where it's like, okay.
Absolutely not. If that actually happens in season 4 or season 5, then I will.
Will being dressed
I'm not
as a
going to
wizard.
say anything of what I will do.
Will being dressed as a wizard was an outlandish theory, and we were right. I will always go back to how right we were, because we predicted that down to the shape of the hat and the color. There's no way we should have got that right.
No.
We did. So if we can guess,
Mike isn't an anti-paladin. Mike's never doing D&D ever again after he jets off to the Byers.
Oh, interesting that you would, think that he might be doing it before he jets off to the Byers.
Don't know what you're talking about. Anyway,
that was my outlandish theory. Let me know your thoughts on, do you think the Byers have links to the Upside Down, or do you think it's just all a big coincidence? I would love to know people's thoughts.
You can let us know your thoughts on many places after listening to the podcast. Yes. On many places. And those places are Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Stitcher, Amazon Music, and Audible at Hawkins Do You Copy. And then let us know on social media at Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at Hawkins Podcast, and then on YouTube and Tumblr at Hawkins Do You Copy. Keep an eye out for Question of the Weeks. As I said earlier, we'll be doing it again.
It's a weird few weeks, but Question of the Week has returned.
Next week.
All that matters for Halloween.
We're going to be, actually, watch out on our social media, because we'll be asking some questions, and we will want questions from you. It's going to be, will it be a fun one? We'll see.
Will it be a mess?
Probably.
And then do you know what? Speaking of messes, it's Halloween week, and then the week after, Stranger Things Day.
Oh, perfect. What a treat.
So yeah, come hang out with us on our social medias, and we'll see you next week when it is Halloween. Thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Hawkins Do You Copy podcast. Over and out.